Hello, welcome to my studio. My name is Donnie Carr, and this is the very first episode of a brand new segment here on my channel called Project Feedback. So I just recently had someone hit me up and they're interested, or they wanted me to take a closer look at their actual project file and maybe give some pointers, some feedback, and just some general advice. And I thought that was super cool, that someone was interested in getting better at production and wanted me to take a look, and I'm happy to help. So that gave me the idea, though, to maybe do this more often for anyone else who is interested in, me taking a close look at their projects and giving my advice if they want me to. Um, so what I've done is I've created just a new email. It's called projectfeedback@gmail.com. I'm going to link that up below. And if you're interested in me taking a look at your project, then just put your project file, all your samples and stems into one folder, and then email it to me. And keep in mind, though, if I don't have, I may not have the plugins or the VSTs that you have. And so if that's the case, then we can maybe chat about that in the email. And if I don't have a VST, for example, that you have, then maybe you can bounce those parts out. But we can make it work. Um, so this is the first episode here. This is a track by a nice lad named Tom, and this is his very first track. So I'm not going to be super critical, but I did write down a few notes that I think can definitely benefit him in the future. And I hope that I can give him just a push or a nice little kick in the right direction. So I'm going to give you a little preview of the track here, and then we'll dive into it and we'll dissect it a little bit, and we'll talk about some ways that this track can be improved. So here's a little preview. Okay, so that's the track there. I will note that this is exactly how the project was sent to me. The only thing I did was label what some of the elements were here on the left side of the screen, just for my own sanity. And that'll be my first point here. Is if you do want me to take a look at your projects, please label everything so I don't have to go through and do it for you. So just please do that. And that'll be my first point here. Is I know it's your first track, but just make a habit of labeling everything. Trust me, if you ever do want to go back to older projects, it'll just be so much easier, and it's just a good habit to get into. And also that goes for, you want to put everything into the mixer, route everything to the mixer. That's my second little tip here. Because you just want full control over it, and you want to know where everything's at, and you need to have everything in the mixer if you're properly going to mix a track. So everything needs to go in the mixer, and everything needs to be labeled. I did a video recently about my template, and I kind of go into why it's important to label things, to keep organized, to have a color scheme. So that might be of value to you. So you might want to go check that video out. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. The first thing I want to address here is having if we go over here to the master, Let's take a look at this limiter that's on the master here. This track is already being crushed. That's not good. That's not what we want. You want to produce so you have headroom. You don't want to be clipping. So if I take this off, we're already way over 0, and that's not good. So turn those volumes down, because you want to make a habit of this too. You want to be peaking at the most at -3. That's at the very most. I always go for around -6-ish is a good spot to. And I mean, if you need more volume, then turn it up on your audio interface, because we don't want to be limiting our tracks here. So I would just recommend just turn that off. Just take the limiter off the master. Now there are some producers that do produce into a mastering chain. I don't like doing that. I never really have. I get it, and I wouldn't recommend doing it at all unless you're pretty experienced. And so for the first little bit, while you're learning, just don't do it. So that's my first major tip there. The second is the kick here. Let's have a look at the kicks, because there is 2 of them here. So just gonna loop this here, and you know what, we're just gonna mute some of these. Mute these for right now. Okay. So we have this kick here, and then we have this kick here, and they're both occupying the low frequency area. If you're going to layer kicks, you need to have one kick that's occupying the low frequency area, and then one for the if there's multiple ways to go about this. You could have like 3 kicks or even 4 kicks. That's getting pretty complicated, and I just wouldn't recommend doing that since this is your first track and you're a beginner. So you want to have one kick to occupy the low frequencies and one occupying the top frequencies. And if you are feeling comfortable with that, then maybe you can try adding a 3rd kick in there, one that has a nice mid-range. But those need to be EQ'd properly to fit together. So that's my second major tip here. This reverb kick sounds cool, but it's just taking up way too much space because it's not routed to the mixer, so it's on the master here. And there's stereo information all over the place here. If I pull up Imager here, yeah, just all over the place for the stereo content, which sounds great, but it's just gonna take up too much space. You want the focus, the main focus of your kick and the bass down in those lower frequencies to be pretty much mono. Otherwise, you're going to lose your impact, you're going to lose your clarity, it's going to take up too much space, and there's not going to be space for your bass line, there's not going to be enough space for all your other elements. So and you can put reverb on your kick, and I did make a video explaining one of the ways I process a techno kick and layer a techno kick. So I'm going to refer you to that video, and I'll put that up in the card below or up above, so go check that out if you're interested. I just kind of spent a lot of time thinking about that video and putting it together, so I think it's of value to you. So go check that out to learn more about processing a kick and layering your kicks. The second is the bass. Let's take a look at the bass here. So let's unsolo that. I'm going to turn this kick off right now. So without the limiter, everything's just smashed. So I'm going to turn this kick down, and this bass isn't routed to the mixer, and we need control over that bass. So we need to put it in the mixer. Where is it? Let's put it on, I don't know, 19. Okay. See, it's clipping. Turn that down. It's way too loud there. That's more of an appropriate volume. Yeah, I think, you know, everyone wants their bass to be massive and huge, but you need to be careful because you can overdo it really easy with the bass. I would even low cut this bass. So we could put a high pass on it and make a little bit of room for the kick. I'm going to move this over so it's right next to our kick here for you. So that's, you know, with the volume adjustments, and that's how the volume was. So yeah, I mean, you could have all the greatest, biggest sounding elements. They sound huge in isolation, but if the levels aren't right, then it'll still end up, you know, sounding like shit. So when you're thinking about your kick and your bass, and this is the reason I'm focusing more on these things. This is the foundation of your track here. The kick and the bass is the heart and soul of dance music. So those need to be nailed to the floor. Those need to be right. So yeah, you either need to have the kick occupying or being kind of that driving force down low, or the bass. Um, you can't have a huge kick and a huge bass playing at the same time. You know, if they're not playing at the same time, if you have an offbeat bass, then you could make it a lot bigger and leave all the low frequencies in there. But I find that most of the time I'm low cutting my bass to make a little bit of room for, you know, a big thumpy kick. Um, so yeah, kick and bass relationship, it's extremely important, and make sure that to go back to having headroom for your track. What I kind of like to do is maybe set my kick at about -10, -12 dB. That's just a rough, you know, area. That's not an exact science, but that will give you plenty of room for all your other elements, when you have everything else in there, and still have, you know, still not be clipping, and have plenty of room for the mastering stage if you know, wanted to master your track. So yeah, I'm not going to go into super fine detail about this. I will address the EQ that's on this kick, which is just not the EQ you want for a kick, honestly. In some cases, you might do an EQ with crazy boosts like this, for more sound design purposes, but for a kick, no. You want to find a kick that already has that frequency content that's right, that full of rich harmonics, and in most cases you want to be doing subtractive EQ rather than crazy boosts like this, because big boosts like this all the way up by 18 dB, it sounds artificial, it sounds unnatural, and instead of boosting these frequencies, so let's take a yeah, instead of boosting these areas here, and like the 300 hertz range is a range that causes a lot of mud in a track. So instead of boosting these areas, which there's really no frequency content, you just want to pick samples, or a kick that already has those in there. So you're not trying to boost something that's not there. That makes sense. And even I'll even low cut my kick 95% of the time anyways too, anything below 300 hertz, just to make, just because you can't hear anything down there, and it's just gonna give you a little bit more, just a little bit more space in the mix, even though your speakers can't really output those low frequencies. So yeah, this kind of EQ for a kick, I would completely avoid it at all. If anything, I'd be kind of doing some subtractive EQ. And I cover that also, I believe, in my kick video, so go check that out. All right, so now that we've kind of talked a little bit about the kick and the bass, and just how important that relationship is, and to not, overdo either one, and to pick the right samples, and to not have your bass too loud, having that kind of just be a support for the kick. And there's other ways to enhance that with side chaining and this and that, which I'm not gonna go into on this video. There's a million ways to side chain. Yeah, so the other thing that I kind of that stood out that I wanted to talk about was this hat here. So let's listen to this. Let's listen to it with the track though. First of all, it's way too loud. I'll be honest with you there, and it's too robotic. There's not enough movement, and with music production, we kind of want to manipulate the computer to be more human. And one human characteristic is, changes in velocity. So on this hat here, what you can do to create interest here, much more interest, is to change the velocity up. See how it's just a straight across here? I mean, instantly, with just that simple up-down motion with the velocity, it's way more interesting, because your ear gets super used to sounds that are just static and unchanging. So we love, our ears want to hear those subtle changes and subtle, differences in timing and velocity and pitch and all those fun things. So that's one simple technique to just add a little extra groove to your hats, is to just change up the velocity on it a little bit. I think that'll make a big difference for you. The other thing would be, this is a simple technique, but I think it could help you out too, is instead of doing volume automation, which, don't get me wrong, volume automation is great, and I use it in every single production, but you might want to try doing just some filter automation, which is a super common technique, but it's a common technique because it works, and it's used in pretty much every single track for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but so let's take a look at this perk here. No, it's not that one. It was, yeah, this one with the little delay here. You have a volume automation happening there. So instead of maybe automating the volume, let's see, what channel is that on? This one here. Maybe you can try doing, some filter automation, perhaps. So cut out the highs to start, so it's just those lower frequencies are coming through. Let's play this with the track, actually, and I'm going to turn that volume automation off for now. Oops. And so this could be interesting, more interesting for this sound. And then you can automate it for it to slowly come in and just have those lower frequencies, come through the filter to start, and then automate the filter to open up a little bit over time, and you can close the filter, and it just it could be a more interesting way to increase the volume without actually increasing the volume. So those are just the major points that I wanted to touch on. Again, I'm not going to go into every single, oh, you know what? There is one other thing that I can suggest that could really help you, enhance your productions here, and that's utilizing reverb sends. So let's just loop this little spot here. And so to create a reverb sound, those are these tracks over here on the right. So what you can do here is put a reverb or delay or any effect. We'll just focus on a reverb for today. Put a reverb on this channel. We'll use Fruity Reverb 2. And if you're putting a reverb on a send track like this, what you want to do is make sure that the wet signal is at 100% and the dry is all the way off, because what you're essentially doing when you set up a reverb send is you're sending a copy of that track through this reverb. So you don't want any of the dry signal going through that, because you already have the dry signal going out to the master. And all we want to hear is the wet signal of that track. So turn that all the way up, turn it to 100%, turn this down, and we're going to turn this to the left to spread that reverb out to give everything a little bit of a width, and we'll take a little bit of the lows out. So now what we'll do is we'll send some of these instruments you have playing here. So we'll send this through. So with the reverb on, with it off. So that can give everything some, put everything in one single space, to create some continuity within your elements, and don't be overzealous with that, and you want to use it sparingly. You don't want to turn it up to 100% on each track. But a little bit of reverb can go a long way in enhancing your music. So I think that's probably enough to maybe take home and really try out in some of your next productions. I just recommend don't worry about like getting new samples, don't worry about getting new plugins, don't worry about all those things. Worry about how to use what you have, because FL Studio comes out of the box with everything you need to make great music. So don't worry about it. Comes with great samples too to start. So you don't even worry about it. Just worry about making tracks, make 100 tracks at least before you even think about like buying specific sample packs for a certain genre or this and that. Like, just learn how to use what you have before you get other stuff, because you'll need to learn those too. So I hope that I wasn't like super harsh, because I'm super stoked that you wanted me to check out your track. So I hope that I was helpful in some ways, and hopefully multiple ways. So yeah, that is the video for today, the first episode of Project Feedback. Again, if you want me to do the same thing to your track, to kind of dissect a little bit, give my my thoughts, my feedback, then I'd be happy to do so. So the email is in the description below. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.